John, good afternoon, buddy. It's Saturday, and I got to tell you, I'm really excited about this episode. We're talking about movies and cars. And as someone who hasn't had a car in 15 years, you may think like, what the hell? Why am I excited about this? Uh, but I got to tell you, I had the best collection of Hot Wheels when I was growing up, and that's the closest I've been to the coolest cars besides my station wagons, which were a deterrent to any woman looking for a date. Um, but John, I know you have a special history with cars
No.
and your father. You want to tell us really quickly what's going on there?
Yeah. So my dad was always big into cars. He always loved cars. He's from Holland. He's European. They love cars. Like he's always been a huge fan of cars since he was a little kid. And for gosh, almost close to 30 years, he was the owner of Victory Auto Wreckers, part owner of Victory Auto Wreckers with his partner. And they were based in Bensenville, Illinois. And if you're from Chicago, you probably have seen the ads. It starts off, that old car is worth money. And then this dude with the big afro, or big giant perm comes out,
Yep.
opens up a door of a green car. It falls on his foot. That was my dad's business. And my dad was always surrounded by cars, not always the nicest cars at work,
Yep.
but cars. And he
Yeah.
is a huge fan, kind of like, like a little bit about your background too, with
Yeah.
your father, big
Yeah.
fans.
This, for my late great dad, if he were here, he would insist on coming to the shows. First of all, so he could tell everyone like why I should get more into cars and why I should have a car. He would first tell me that with good insurance. So sorry, Dad, let you down again. But we grew up in Southern California. My dad grew up in San Bernardino, which at the time wasn't a murder capital of California. It was actually a really cool space that had big bands coming through, like the Stones. But primarily, it was a car culture. And this is where your first drive-ins started, such as McDonald's, right? People think it was in Des Plaines, Illinois, but it was actually in San Bernardino. And so a lot of films such as American Graffiti were based on actually my dad's crew of friends. And it was just the coolest thing to watch this movie. My dad would point out, okay, this character, I drag raced against him here. And they just did it out in these kind of, more Eastern LA County, East kind of San Bernardino County, where there was just a lot of kind of open space. And so I just grew up around cars. My dad, all of his friends talked about cars. There was car shows. And so through my dad, I just got to love it. Now, unfortunately, the pinnacle of my car experience was a Ford station wagon that was baby blue, which no woman ever got in there. It didn't have a radio. It was just what do you call it? Social suicide. It was just a pariah in the high school parking lot. But for those that remember, that was mine. That ugly station wagon.
We all had friends in high school. I think all of us could
Yeah.
have like at least two or three friends that had like either a station wagon or a van or
Yeah.
some kind of car, a gremlin that we all like kind of
Yeah.
laughed at because it was a hand me down, hand me
Oh
down,
yeah.
hand me down.
Yeah.
And it was always really funny, but we always appreciated that.
Yeah. And I think as we looked into this list here, the other part that I just loved is talking about American culture. For so much time, we talk about Americans, it's like, people, especially when I lived abroad, they're like, oh, I eat cheeseburgers, everyone's fat, and you guys are retarded. But cars, this is where you're like, that's right, I'm an American here, especially when you're talking about the 70s muscle cars, Challenger, the Charger, the Mustang. And then you combine them with Hollywood, coolest actors on the planet, and it just makes for incredible movies. Obviously, with car chases, it's hard not to be enthralled with a good car chase.
Oh yeah.
But what happened, John, since then? Well, what happened to cars in the 80s, and what happened in Detroit? Which,
Yeah. I think the 70s and 80s were probably the pinnacle of car chases that were in movies, I really
yeah,
believe. And then as you kind of got into the 90s, that not that car culture died in the
yeah,
US because it's always been that way. But I mean, Detroit, all of a sudden, like you said, you had the Challenger, the Mustang, the
yeah,
Viper, these badass names of these big steel muscle cars,
Yep.
and all of a sudden the 90s roll in. You've got the Tercel or the Neon or the Rio
Oh,
or
dude.
whatever. I
The
mean, it's like
Lumina. My favorite is the Lumina.
The Lumina. I
So
mean, they all, it just sort of, that it sort of was like this really tough kid, and all of a sudden became kind of like this like little wimpy kid.
yeah.
Um,
And
and
you
they still made the Corvette was still around, things like that were still around, but
yeah.
it changed. It definitely changed.
It definitely did. You can't see Steve McQueen or even Brad Pitt or DiCaprio go, "Hey man, let's take the Lumina. We're
Let's get
hitting
out
it.
there,
Take the
hitting the
Lumina.
strip tonight.
Put your seatbelts
Come
on."
on.
There's just something that went awry, and I think we have
Yeah.
new. There's the Dodge Viper. There are some
Yeah.
concerted efforts to bring back some of the muscle
Yeah.
or glam back in the car scene. But going through this movie list, I think a lot of mine, obviously, from the 70s, which is to me the golden age of cinema.
Yep. Yep.
But what is it about our fascination with cars and movies?
Yeah.
From the audience point of view, but also the directors and the studios.
Yeah, I think I mean, the America's fascination with cars and car culture has been around since the very beginning. I mean, since like, the 20s and 30s and 40s, and especially the 50s and 60s and 70s, but it's always been there. It's still here even today,
Yeah.
as cars have evolved into different things now. But for movies, the car chase, to me, in my opinion, was
Yeah.
always a critical part to an action movie. There was
Yeah.
always a great car chase scene, because it kept you on the edge of your seat.
Yeah.
It was exciting. Like, you were kind of spellbound during that maybe, 5 to 10 minute scene where they'd just be driving,
Yeah.
wherever they were, whether foreign country in the US. It was a great little piece of a movie. Technically, I don't know what a director would call it, but it was a
Yeah.
great little added value to the movie when there was a car chase, because it was fun. Like, it was a fun thing to watch. And back in these earlier days, like you said, there wasn't any CGI, there was no
Yeah.
special effects. So these guys were doing it very raw, and
Oh, yeah.
it shows. It really shows.
It's such a ubiquitous object, right? Everyone, and especially in American culture, cars are just in our DNA. So for a director, it's almost like when you're doing houses and movies, you can put a personality behind it, just like how people have different houses. Even though the cars are somewhat standardized in terms of models and whatnot, they can paint them. You can have them drive in certain ways. So there's ways for the director, I saw, to really take a very common object and put his own personality in it. And yeah, I mean, who doesn't love a good car chase?
Yeah.
And especially as the stunts advanced, and you're just getting that pre-CGI excitement, but that we could relate to. It's not like monsters or superheroes that are flying across. It's like, hey man, you can actually see a car crash that's not even simulated. It's like the real thing.
Yeah. Yep.
And I think that's just, there's obviously some philosophical parts to the car representing freedom and, getting on the road and being able to kind of break the rules. I just saw it as like, hey man, they're just cool things that you can.
Yeah, and a lot of times it was like bad guy versus a good guy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was like a good guy chasing a bad guy.
Yeah.
So many times in so many of those movies, or whether it was like in, Road Warrior, where he's just trying to deliver a tank of gasoline. I mean, there's always something that's intricate to the plot of the movie that makes that scene so important and just so much fun to watch. And there's so many, and we'll talk about, there's so many great, oh my God, there's so many great movies that if our audience hasn't seen some of these, you can actually, go on YouTube and you can actually watch like a particular car chase scene. And they're just amazing. They're just fun to watch. Even I'm watching the movie to see the car chase scene. It's fantastic.
It's definitely true. And we're going to put together a playlist for those that haven't seen these. And we're going to mention quite a lot of movies here. Feel free to go to our YouTube channel, and on there we're going to have a special playlist for this episode. But going into these buckets, John, we have movies such as Taxi Driver with Robert De Niro in the 70s, which it's not a car chase in that traditional sense, but it's him and his relationship in a car as an important vehicle to his character. Then we have the quintessential car chase movies. Probably the ultimate would be Smoking the Bandit, which is essentially an entire movie about a car chase,
Yeah.
right? More
Yep.
about time, right? Yeah, he's
Right.
going against Buford T. But it's, to bring beer from Arkansas to Georgia. And then you have the car as a character, like Christine, a Stephen King novel,
Yeah. Yep.
or The Car, 1977, which is, or Duel is Spielberg's debut, where the car is like a shark, right? It's like Jaws. It's this
Yeah.
ominous feature. So
Right.
you
Even
have,
National Lampoon's Vacation with the family truckster, you know?
there you go.
That's another great movie where it's like it's a comedy, but the car is integral part of the movie because the whole movie's about
Yeah.
riding in a car
Yeah.
from Chicago to Wally World.
Yeah, and you see the damage done on the family from the trials and tribulations, as well as you see the damage on the car by the time it gets to California.
It's just the best.
Yeah,
It's just the best.
and the stories around the car, and so as we go into these first buckets here, I think it's only apropos to talk about the car chases, which
Yeah.
is the most thrilling part, I think, of any movie.
Yeah.
But some of these specifically, John, which ones, in terms of your car chase, that you just,
it's a tough one because I
yeah,
think there are so many, but I
yeah,
will raise one to the top because it has a few things that I'll call out my
yeah,
favorite number 1968 Bullet,
yeah,
starring Steve McQueen. Now Steve McQueen to me was the essence of cool.
yeah.
Just
Oh, still is, bro. Like,
for
I don't know
every
anyone who's
reason
different
there
than him.
was. Steve
Yeah, yeah,
McQueen, like just he was just he personified cool.
yeah,
So you have number one, you have him. And he's driving this 1968. What was I'm looking at my notes here? It was a 68 Ford Mustang
oh yeah,
GT, right?
that's
It was
right.
like this badass green muscle car. So that's cool. And the chase scene doesn't start off like right off the bat they go at each other.
Yeah,
It's a sort of cat and mouse for the first 3 minutes and 33 seconds of the chase scene. It's
yeah,
kind of this sort of cat and mouse. And then all of a sudden, boom, they hit it and they're off through the streets of San Francisco,
yeah,
going through the hills. And to
yeah,
me, that's my favorite car chase
yeah,
scene. And he's just like Steve McQueen, like jump like 15 feet in the air. He's like, just,
yeah,
his hair is like this, so cool
yeah,
driving. I'm like, I watched every time I see that car chase scene, I'm like, God damn, like
yeah.
it's just amazing.
You
Like I
got
love
you
that.
got a
I
man
love
crush
it.
on him. I think you got a man
I mean,
crush on
and
him.
it's just it was I
We're
have like a
talking,
little bit of a bro crush on him.
you
I'm
got a
not
bro
not
crush.
joking.
Dude,
Like
it's
no one
good.
can
We
wear a
all do.
turtleneck like Steve
Yeah,
McQueen.
yeah,
Okay, the dude can
yeah.
wear a turtleneck and make it look good. How about you? Like at
I
top of your list, I know I think we'll be very similar. But what's your
yeah.
favorite car chase scene?
Here's one that you and I talked about before we did this episode. This is
Mm.
Roy Scheider,
Oh
1973,
God,
The Seven Ups. Okay, most
so
people,
good.
I want to say this, you haven't heard or watched this movie.
Yeah.
It is somehow, it is just horribly underrated, right?
Yep.
This movie is amazing. I recommend it, right? And I've seen The French Connection and all the best, kind of so-called top 10 car chases. But what makes this one special, it takes on the Upper East Side, right? New York,
Mm.
Upper West Side, sorry, in New York.
Yeah.
But it's about 9.5 minutes. It's in a Pontiac, and it
Yep.
is just
It's
I
awesome.
think it's just like in Bullet, you have San Francisco with the hills. This
Yeah.
one, he's knocking over food carts,
Yep.
and it's a little bit darker. It didn't have the, I won't
Yeah.
say cheesy, like James Bond car scenes that are
Right.
just
Right.
almost over the top. This is
Yeah.
one that you could actually see on like Cops, right? Or
Right.
the
Right.
Florida, if the Florida
Like this
man was
actually
up
happens in
yeah.
Chicago right
Yeah.
now. Like this is outside your window. This is actually happening right
Yeah,
now.
exactly. So and Roy Scheider is just
Yeah.
amazing. It's just about a group
Amazing.
of basic not dirty cops, but they're very loose on their ways of enforcement.
Mm.
But I will say the one that I thought was most interesting was The French Connection, which is obviously
Yes.
William Friedkin, 1971, won Best Picture that
Yes.
year. But it stars Gene Hackman. He plays Popeye. I forgot his last name. Popeye Doyle, right? Plays this basically a policeman chasing this French group that are smuggling drugs, but he doesn't have permits. He only has permits in certain areas of New York. It's around Bensonhurst, so it's actually Brooklyn in the Italian
Yep.
district where they filmed Saturday Night Fever. So if you remember those iconic beginning of the movie with the
Yep.
subway, that's where they filmed French Connection. So the extras in the movie are real people. So he actually, the car crashes are real. So Friedkin is just a total psycho as a director, apparently. I mean, obviously super talented. But I thought, so when you watch it, knowing that, it's freaky because like literally they're almost hitting
Yep.
real
And
people.
it's interesting about this one too, Scott. I totally agree with everything you said. The camera angles
Yeah.
that are just you like you're just like sitting on you're getting nervous
Yeah.
watching it. You like almost want to close your eyes.
Yeah.
What's interesting in this one too, it's not even a car chase, it's a car chasing a train.
Yeah.
Like he's chasing the
Exactly.
elevated train. So
That's right.
he's like driving, looking up, trying to
Yeah.
catch a killer on a train,
Yeah.
and they almost like wipes out a woman with a stroller. And
Yeah.
it's phenomenal. It is such a great car
Yeah.
chase scene. And Gene Hackman, like Roy Schneider,
Yeah.
is just his acting is like just it's
Oh,
intense.
it's
It's intense.
intense.
And it's really good.
It's it
Really
both.
good.
That's a great comparison because you just get that feeling that they're like these guys are just badass off the camera, right? And you just
Yeah.
can't get that from watching Speed with Keanu Reeves, right?
No.
You couldn't put
Uh,
Keanu in the French Connection. Like there's a bomb on the bus, guys. I need to get a slice
I
of
love
pizza
and I
before. Like,
love Keanu Reeves too so
yeah,
much.
no,
But yeah,
he's a fantastic guy, but
it wouldn't be the same.
yeah, it'd
It
be
wouldn't be the
like,
same
hey,
as Roy Schneider
yeah,
and Gene Hackman because
yeah,
they were in they were just so good. They weren't pretty to look at. I mean, Steve
yeah.
McQueen was a good looking dude. Roy Schneider, Gene Hackman,
Well,
they're
hey,
like average Joes.
well, no,
But
they look like they're characters, man. Like
yeah,
you think of a
they
New
look
York
like it.
cop,
Yeah,
like that.
yeah,
Gene Hackman's going to look like it. You're not going to get him
yeah,
because if you look like Steve McQueen, they'll be like, you should be in the movies.
yeah,
That's what they
dude.
tell
You
you.
should be on TV. You shouldn't be driving a
Why are
fucking
you a
car.
freaking New York cop? So
Yeah,
moving along here. So we have those, cop kind of car chases. And there's a lot of other ones. There's comedic ones like Smoking the
yeah,
Bandit.
yeah.
There's Blues Brothers, which are
Oh,
just kind of over the top car chases that are fun to see.
yeah.
But going into this second bucket where the car is typically this evil character or just a character in itself, Duel with
Oh,
1971. This is Steven
so
Spielberg's
good. So
directorial
good.
debut,
So
which,
good. So good.
okay, it's a traveling salesman in a red Plymouth going through, I think,
With
from
white
LA. Yeah,
interior, white
yeah,
leather interior.
exactly. In 70s, right? These are just big, ugly
Yeah.
cars. And there's one truck because I heard they didn't have enough budget for multiple trucks. That's just chasing him. So we're not going to give all the spoilers and whatnot, but um it I thought was interesting about this and learned it was the precursor to Jaws. Essentially, the truck
Yeah.
is the shark, and it's
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
ominous, almost faceless enemy, or I don't even call it apparition. It's just this evil entity. Uh, and John, you actually told me about this, and I watched it, and it was on Svengoolie, I believe,
Yep.
which is our
Yep.
favorite show.
Yeah. Yep.
What did you tell me about it? Because I had to
It's just
watch it.
I mean, it's so 70s, right? Like it's kind of a B movie budget, right?
Yeah,
It's not a big budget film, and it takes place basically in the desert.
yeah,
And it's just big, like ugly black truck, and it's just this average. It's Dennis Weaver who plays the salesman, and like you say, he's in this little goofy little red car. He's just driving around,
yeah,
and out of nowhere, this giant black truck begins to like just taunt him, and it's a very suspenseful movie.
yeah,
And the poor guy, like Dennis Weaver, does a great job playing this tormented person. He's like, I just want to sell my shit and go home.
yeah,
And this giant truck is following him. It's kind of like it kind of goes back to almost like a Christine kind of
yeah,
film where the car becomes becomes the killer. And
yeah,
it's a great kind of B film. Like you said, Steven Spielberg's directorial debut.
yeah,
Definitely worth a watch. It's
yeah.
really good. Really good.
I tell you, it is raw, and you can see the genius of Spielberg. He was in his early 20s. This is 4 years before, or 3 years before he got on the set of Jaws.
Yeah.
And so really kind of seeing a young genius. Other movies that I thought around
Yep.
that time that I would say these are the ones you probably haven't heard about, but my gosh, it is just unbelievable here, but Vanishing Point, 1971.
Oh
This
yeah,
is a
yeah,
white Dodge Challenger. And it takes place in the Southwest, I think around Arizona and whatnot.
yep, yep.
And it has that culty feel. It's kind of a random actor, but the shots are just beautiful. So the landscape,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
so I would just recommend it to anyone who's seen obviously all the top kind of car movies, if you will.
Yep,
It's really a hidden gem.
it is a good
Um,
one.
but as we look at the one that is an evil presence, one we also saw was The Car from
The
1977,
car.
starring James
Yep,
Brolin.
yep.
This one, similar to Christine and similar to Duel, I thought was good too. The car itself was really ominous.
Yeah, I agree. I think that one was for some reason, man, I'm telling you, all these movies like in the 70s, they just those car movies, they just they just got it right.
Yeah.
It's and here's one on my list, Scott, that I just literally had like to
Yep.
look up because I totally forgot about it. Was from 1986, Maximum Overdrive, which was a Stephen
Yeah.
King
Oh, wow.
book. And remember that it
Yeah.
had a wicked soundtrack from
Maximum overdrive.
AC/DC, a
Yes.
wicked soundtrack. And it was about the meteor that came across the sky and turned all the, not just the cars and trucks, but just like machines against
Yep.
humans. And the
Yep.
main character is this giant truck with a big the Green Goblin from Spider-Man is on the
Yeah.
front, is a toy truck. That one was a good one too,
Yeah.
where like these cars become killers and they
Yeah.
surround that truck stop with
Yeah.
Emilio Estevez, and they're
Oh
all
man.
going
Right. You
around.
said it right there. Emilio, we don't, guys,
Emilio
we need to say
Estevez.
any more, right?
Enough said. Emilio
This this is
Estevez.
a mandatory, right? Just
It is.
shut down the podcast, get out your your Amazon Prime, search and buy it for
And
$2.99
it
if
again,
it's on
just
there.
a badass soundtrack. So good.
And put
So
on your
that's
buy
another
buy a 6-pack of Miller High Life and watch Mac and listen to
right. Get a pack of
ACDC.
Marlboro Reds and watch a little bit of listen to ACDC with Maximum Overdrive. No, those were I love those movies where the car becomes kind of the killer. You mentioned
Yeah.
I'll just poke a few of my favorites. You
Yeah.
mentioned Blues Brothers. Being a Chicago native, the Blues Brothers was the film I saw in the theater.
Yeah.
And the car chase at the end was fun because it was in Illinois,
Yeah.
and it went through the streets of Chicago. And I think they had John Landis was a director, and he
Yeah.
went through 60 police cars and over 40 stunt drivers
That's
to
crazy.
make that final scene in the Blues Brothers,
Yeah.
which was awesome. There was no fancy cars; they were all
Yeah.
pieces of shit, police cars. And then I think you hit on a lot of mine. The other one, and we kind of talked about it a little bit, was a James Bond movie, right?
Yep.
And we kind of laugh at James Bond because, well, it's just James Bond, and as
Yep.
cool as he is, there was that scene in Thailand, 1974, The Man with the Golden Gun, where you talk about like ridiculous stunts, where his 1974 AMC Hornet does a
Yeah.
complete like corkscrew barrel roll
Yeah.
in that driving scene
yeah.
where he's got the cop from Texas with him in the
Yeah,
car,
yeah.
and
The
it's Roger
redneck.
Moore, and he's driving around. That's another like little fun
Yeah.
favorite of mine as well.
So John, we talked a lot about America and all
Yep.
the wonderful cars, especially those muscle cars that we love so near and dear to us. But Europe has some
Yep.
great, obviously, like you mentioned, your dad out in Holland, a huge
Mhm.
car fan. Europe's
Yep.
got its own flavor of cars. Now, it's not as widespread as in American culture. But hey, we got to admit, man, Germany makes some cool cars. You got to attest to that.
They do. They do.
Obviously, France gets in there too. What movie? I mean, we have some pretty cool. Steve McQueen, for example,
Yep.
that's one of the best French car movies.
Ever made, right?
Le Mans.
Le Mans, which is a super good movie.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's Steve McQueen driving a Formula One car.
Yep.
Can't get much better than that. That was a great film. If people haven't seen that movie, it's just it's a great film about that 24-hour race. It's amazing. It is that is an intentional car chase scene.
Yeah.
Where they're literally chasing it intent, but that's also a really, really good one. What are the ones we have from overseas, Scott? What's one of your more
Okay,
favorite ones?
one that I love, and this is, I don't know if it's a technically a full feature movie as in the ones we know. This is
Yeah.
from 1976. It's called, I'll
Mm.
say it in French, right? C'était un rendezvous. This means it was a meeting, basically. It was a rendezvous.
Yeah.
And this is I don't even know what the car, my research says it's not, it's called a Merc or something. You'll just have to see it, everyone. I'm telling you,
Yeah.
it's on YouTube and it's free. And it's 8 minutes and it is unbelievable. This takes place at like 5 in the morning from one point of Paris all the way to the top of
Yeah.
soccer court, right? Which is Montmartre. This is the hill. And I used to live there for six
Right.
years. And so when
Right.
I tell people, hey, man, you're going to Paris, you got to watch this movie. It is a guy hooks up a camera to his grill of this car. It looks like a DeLorean, right? This thing
Right.
is, and he's just going 100 miles per hour, and those are kilometers, whatever. And he just goes through the streets of Paris. There's no one there. There's early morning delivery trucks and whatnot. And he just goes all the way to the top. And then he meets his girlfriend at there, and then he kisses her, and that's it. So just
That's
to tell
it.
everyone, that's it. But it's unbelievable and it's entrancing. Like you will be locked to your seat. And that's all I can say. It's very French in the way, like there's no
So French.
explanation. It's just like, yeah, man, you're gonna watch it and that's it.
Yeah. That is cool. That is, and I've never actually seen that one before. So now I have
Yeah.
to go on YouTube and watch
You,
that one.
I'll put the link
That
out on our channel. So there you go,
that
everyone.
That's again the only other one I could think of. Too is kind of like Le Mans was one that I saw. My dad actually introduced me to was from Grand Prix from 1968 with
Yeah.
James Garner.
Yeah.
Another great racing film across Europe. Another really good one. But your French one, the Septien Rendezvous.
Yeah,
I
say thing.
can't. I
I mean,
can't.
yeah, no, it's all right, bro. It's all good.
Rendezvous.
It just
Is it my
in
French
many cases they just call it rendezvous. But if you're looking for it
rendezvous?
in its full title, we'll put it on our channel. You don't need to speak
Amazing.
French. Just go to Steph Nation on YouTube, and we did all the hard work for you. There's
Yeah.
nothing you got to do.
Right
Um,
on.
our modern days, we focus a lot obviously on the 60s, 70s, and 80s movies, but there's Fast and Furious, there's
Oh yeah.
Transformers, there's so
Yeah.
many movies that have come out that our younger
Yeah.
generation are good. And I
Yep.
listen, they are pretty good, especially because as the cars evolved.
Right. Pretty much
um
anything with Tom Cruise in it,
yeah,
Mission
that's it.
Impossibles. I mean, there's
You got
always some
comment
kind of
totally.
there's always some kind of race with Tom Cruise. So you're right there. I mean, nowadays too, the special effects, the CGI, the
Yeah.
way they do it's a totally different world they're bringing to the screen, which is entertaining. I mean, still entertaining, you know.
You have so many Days of Thunder, and then you have comedy Talladega Nights, which is one of my favorite comedy movies, right? Especially with the intersection of Sacha Cohen as the gay French competitor there. And it's just a great racing movie.
Yeah, it's
But
good.
I tell you, it's just such a joy to go through these because it makes you want to go buy a car. I don't know, maybe if me, as you know, I'll be moving to the West in a couple months, everyone. And so I'm going to have to buy a car. So maybe as everyone who's listening, if you want to comment and tell me your recommended car, it doesn't have to be electric, I guess.
I think in 1974, Baby Blue station wagon
Yeah.
would be my
Yeah.
choice for you.
If I could recreate and in fact, for Mesh and Bone, our lovely sponsor, you can see right behind us, we do have a car. It's actually not
We
a car, it's an
do.
RV. And I'm going to
Yeah.
put pictures of that on our site. So you'll know that, hey, we live the Steph Nation brand. We just don't just talk about, we watch the movies and we also live in some of these cars. And I have lived in this RV. So I'll put that out there for everyone to comment on. In any case, John, any final words that you wanted to leave any
No,
car lovers or those that are opposed to you know.
No, it's been a really fun. It makes me want to go back and find photographs of my old cars that I had
Yeah.
growing up as a kid. I didn't have anything as sweet as the Blue Bomber like you had, but I love it if people do have their favorite cars growing up and want to send us pictures of them. We'd love to
Yeah.
see those. That'd be
Oh,
great. That would be great to see if you've got a picture of that, poop brown Ford, whatever it was that you drove,
yeah.
that was so embarrassing, but yet it was functional. We love to see photographs of
Hey,
any old cars that you have.
that's right. Please, that's a great idea, John. Send us not only the car, the picture of the car if you got it, but any nicknames and any stories that happened in there. And if they're not X-rated, then don't send them. We only want the juicy stuff there. Well, anyways,
Right
John.
on.
Well, listen, hey, everyone, thanks so much for joining us. Again, check out our channel. We're going to put these movies up in a playlist, and we'll see you guys next week.
Yeah. See everybody. Have a good
Yeah.
weekend.